Hello, everyone. Today I'm happy again for a new conversation and interview with a new guest. Her name is Unmani. Hi, Unmani.
Hello.
Thanks for accepting. I would like to ask you if you can just say something about the Unmani story, where it all started, where which fantastic meetings you had with maybe teachers or people in general that inspired you in this journey.
Okay. Well, for me, it all really started when I was a child, because as a child, I recognized already that who I really am is not separate from anything or anyone else. And in fact, I felt very confused by the way other people were interacting and asking my opinion or my preferences as if there is someone in here. And anytime I looked to find that someone, I couldn't find it. But because of the way my parents and family and teachers, friends, whatever, were, I assumed that there was something wrong with me. And so I thought that I needed to find someone inside, like everybody else, you know. So that was my search at first, to find someone, because I didn't find anyone. So I tried a lot of different things. I tried different identities, you know, and none of them really fit, because of course they weren't real. You know, I was just pretending, and so I went on a spiritual search eventually, because at first it wasn't really, I couldn't really call it spiritual, but eventually I went to India, and I went to the Osho ashram in Pune. Osho wasn't alive anymore, but he had only passed away a couple of years before that, so the energy in the ashram was still very vibrant. And his words really deeply touched me. And it felt, in a way, like he was pointing me back to the truth of who I am. But somehow I was still quite confused, and still with this feeling of this can't be quite it, something's still missing. And then I came across Dolano, who is a German Zen master, also in India, and she was inviting people to come only when they're ready to die. And I really felt very suicidal. I was very desperate, because I had been searching to find this missing piece, assuming all the time that there was something missing. And so I went to her, and in the time that I spent with her, I basically realized that what I had been searching for was what I had always known as a child. So it was a big reconfirmation of what the child had always known. And there was a great relaxation in once and for all acknowledging that. And then after that, it was, although I went to some other teachers in England after that, it was more and more about exploring in my own experience how this is lived. You know, because as a child, I doubted it and I denied it. And as an adult, I could now say, yes, this is who I am, but still I don't know how to live that. And so through experience, through various ups and downs in my own personal life, I've explored that more and grown in trust and acknowledgement of who I really am. So now as I hold meetings and intensives and with the books that I've written, and it's all again and again a confirmation of that I really am, that has never changed since I was a child. So that's the short story.
Yeah, and I can imagine that when you went to this Osho center, they offered you meditations and techniques, and I'm always very curious to really get to see what's the real line, if there is one, between all this therapy work and whatever is offered in satsang and meetings and like the one you offer, I guess.
What the connection is, you mean?
Yes, the connection, and are they both sides of the same coin, or they are another kind of work, all these technique methods working on your past?
In a way, it depends where you're coming from, because if you still believe that you are someone separate, located inside a body, trying to endlessly fix yourself in order to be free one day, then the therapy and the practices and methods and all of that are only going to reinforce the idea that you are someone separate. Although, of course, they may be temporarily helpful as well. They may bring some insights on the journey, but the root of it is still reinforcing the idea that there's someone separate. But if you've recognized that there is actually no one inside a body living a separate life, then there's freedom to do therapy or practice whatever, to continue to explore the human life and how this human can endlessly evolve and know itself more and more. But all the time you know that there's no real separate individual inside. So any therapy or practices you don't take so seriously that they are going to actually fix your life permanently and save you, or you take it lightly, but you also see that there is a endless possibility to explore this human life.
And also maybe for the body-mind gets wellness from this well-being.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, this body-mind loves to feel more relaxed, to have a sense of openness, to not be buying into thoughts and taking emotions so seriously and playing out old mechanisms, conditioning. It does make life a little easier for this body. But still, if you know that there's no one inside, then still, even though it's about trying to make it more comfortable, you don't take it to mean that it's going to really get to the root of things.
Yeah,
because the root is always this question of who am I?
And this affirmation, you say there's no one inside, is this a starting point of this journey, or it's an end point of this journey?
Well, in a way it's both. It's a starting point because it's the most fundamental acknowledgement. It's while you believe that there's still someone inside, then everything else that happens is kind of distorted somehow. You see life from that distorted perspective. And when you see that there isn't anyone inside, then you see life a little bit more clearly. But at the same time, it's not really the end of the search or the end of exploring life and growing and learning and evolving, because that's really endless. But at the same time, that growing and learning and evolving is only for this human. It's not for who you really are, because who you really are doesn't need to grow and learn or evolve at all. It's absolutely, perfect just as it is, whole. And so in that way, it's the end point as well. But it's this paradox, it's such a paradox. Talk about it. Yeah.
And listening to you, I hear that for you it was clear since you were a child that the reality of who you really are. And in your experience, what is the calling for people to this recognition, acknowledgement of who we really are? The calling to this?
Well, many people have a deep longing to wake up out of their thoughts, their beliefs, their fears, their dreams, because we all have a sense of what is real beyond it all. But perhaps we don't know how to get out of this prison of thought. And we don't even know that it's a possibility. Because usually we live in such fear of not surviving and trying to fit in with everybody. But it can be so painful to live like that. And it seems that for some people, this calling or longing is so strong that they can't bear to live within the prison of trying to fit in all the time. That they break free somehow. We do it. Everybody does it in a different way. Everyone has their own unique path. But it is the longing to recognize and acknowledge their true nature and to live as that.
Yeah. And at the same time, can this be? There can be fear in. You said it's a death, it's a dying to this. So there can be a bit of yes, there is this longing to this. At the same time, there is fear because it would be like death.
Yes, it's such a push-pull. That's why, in a way, people have to be willing to risk what they're afraid of. They're willing to risk feeling that fear. And usually we're willing to risk that only if it's so painful not to. To go on living like that is so unbearable. And then we get so desperate that we're like, okay, I have to go through this fear. And of course, when we go through the fear, then actually we see it's not nearly as bad as we thought. Because the imagination imagines this terrible death, how it will be the end of me, But actually, of course, there's never been a me. So it's not really that this me has to die, because there's never really been a me. It's just that the belief in the me has to be seen through, to be let go of, which is the liberation of the thinking. The thinking tries to create a me to run the life, to be in charge of my life. And we have such fear that when we let go of this control, that then life will just be chaotic and essentially I won't survive. I will just die because no one will be in control. But of course, actually, when you see that there's no one who's ever been in control, even when you thought that you were in control, actually it's a great freedom to let go of this control and to free fall and surrender into who you really are, absolutely nothing. Openness, love, peace, all these beautiful qualities you are already, but it doesn't come from the thinking trying to do it, trying to get it, trying to control. So yeah, it does seem like we have to walk through some fire in order to wake up to our true nature.
Yeah, the thing I like, you say die to love. So it's a death, but it's not, because in many stories I hear about awakenings, there are people that go these tremendous fears, panic attacks, and all this stuff. And maybe it can be like this, but it's not a rule. It's this to love gives me the feeling that it's a death, but there is something sweet waiting and holding everything.
Yes, sweet, but the sweetness isn't what we imagine. When we imagine sweet love, it's kind of dreamy. And actually the love that you wake up to isn't dreamy at all. It's very real. Sometimes so real that it's uncomfortable, because it's really, life happening. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade it in for anything else, because it's reality. It's not a dream. And of course, any dream is unreliable. They come and go, and they're based on temporary experiences. And this reality doesn't come and go. It's just, this is how it is. This love, this life, it includes everything just the way it is, even when it's not sweet. So it's a death of this limited me, this belief in a limited me, dying into the whole of love, which is completely unlimited, whole, free. And yes, that can seem frightening for the me. But at the same time, we long to just let it all go,
Yeah. So you say the me is not a real thing, is a belief.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, when we believe something very strongly, and when we've believed it for so long, there are also physical sensations, like a sense of contraction, that make it seem more real. And when we believe that this me is located inside the body, then it seems that there's evidence for that. Everyone believes that, so why would we question it? Even the visual sense that it seems as if I'm inside looking out of these eyes. So if we investigate that and we question that, actually we don't find anyone inside looking out, but it's just such an assumption that most people are making, that I must be inside looking out. And that's just with the visual sense, of course. There's so many other kind of reasons that we take to prove that I'm in here.
Yeah, you talk about senses. I see it's strange with the senses, because senses, if you play with, they show you that they can be also a door to see the truth. But at the same time, senses gives you this feeling of being limited in a body.
Well, it depends how they're interpreted. Because thought can come in and interpret a sensation, some sense, to mean that this is my sensation, or this is my sound, my voice, my whatever, But if thought doesn't interpret it, then yeah, sensation is an expression of life itself. It's life energy being experienced. So yes, you could say it's very much a door to recognizing who you are. Everything, actually, every experience is a door.
Yeah.
It's just that when thought interprets it to mean something about me, that's when it gets confusing. But actually nothing means anything about me, it's just experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing I'm really asking myself in these last weeks, how does all this conversation relates to the word spiritual? For me, it doesn't have any sense anymore. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I mean, I agree with you that actually there's no difference between spiritual and unspiritual. You know, it's only, you know, the word spiritual tends to be used more when you're on the path trying to fix yourself endlessly, because you imagine that you're on this special path that is specially spiritual, and it's different to ordinary life because you have rejected ordinary life so that you can go on a spiritual search. But actually, this coming back to including the human means that you can't overlook ordinary life anymore. Actually, it's about seeing the spirituality in ordinary life, and see there's no difference. Even the dirt on the floor or anything is all spiritual.
Yeah. Would you say that this is a message, this message about acknowledging who you really are is a message for humanity?
You mean as a whole? Well, I mean, of course, everyone loves to acknowledge their true nature. So in that way, you could say yes. But to talk about humanity as a whole, I find also a mental game. That because actually, for anybody to make the assumption that there is this whole humanity, you have to buy into some dream. You have to imagine the whole of humanity. But actually, your direct experience is only ever going to be this experience, this human, what's happening right here. And so I haven't met all of humanity. I don't know. I can't speak about all of humanity. But I also know that in my experience, everybody is longing for the truth of who they really are. But not everybody is willing to really wake up to that, or ready, or able and this time to wake up to that. But to say more about that seems to get into some kind of intellectual imagining, which is not really my interest.
Yeah, yeah. And you often talk about recognizing who you really are. I often hear other teachers talk about recognizing who you really are by recognizing who you are not. You are not.
Well, it's true that it's very difficult to speak about who you really are. It's easier to say what you are not. Because when you start to use words to describe who you really are, actually the words are never good enough. The words will always be limited, and who you really are is always unlimited. So if you could say all the words all at once, which of course I can't, I don't have all the kind of voice that I could say all the words all at once, but if I could, then maybe I could say what I really am. But yeah, otherwise point to who I'm not, and in a way the energetic pointing, sometimes in the eyes or just in sitting together, there is a pointing to the truth of who you are, but not so much in the words. The words more like clear the misconceptions, the confusion around it, to make space for that recognition that is beyond all the words.
Yeah.
Because actually this is not something that we need to understand or add to our experience. It's something that we all know already. As I said it in my story, I always knew it as a child, and everybody knows it always, but perhaps they don't always acknowledge it consciously. So it's not something new. Actually, it's when we kind of see through all the other mess in the way, then we see, oh, I've always been this.
And you say that this recognition happens by grace. It's a grace.
Well, this sometimes can be used as an excuse to believe that it happens by grace, because then we start to just wait. Oh, well, maybe grace will make it happen. But actually, while you're longing to wake up, you need to try to do everything you possibly can to clear away confusion, or to bring yourself to teachers or whatever, who can point you to this again and again. You need to follow that longing. You need to express that longing, because if you don't, then you're just in a way being passive about it.
Maybe the grace is the longing, because it's not a really honest longing. Is
I mean, even if you hear that, if you hear teachers say, well, there's nothing to do, it's true that there's nothing to do, but you have to discover that for yourself. You can't just believe someone. You have to try to do everything and fail, and try again and fail again and try again and fail again, until you really lose hope.
Yeah, this is a usually common point in non-dual discussions, these things between there's nothing to do and as you said, okay, it's true, but you have to see this for yourself, by yourself. Yeah.
And it's only when you really know this for yourself, when you reach that point of hopelessness in yourself, that then you can see for yourself how ridiculous it is to believe that there's something to do. So, but to just kind of recite what teachers say, oh, there's nothing to do, so yeah, well, may as well just sit around at home and not do anything. But then if you're really longing for the truth, you just can't do that. You have to keep following it somehow. And even if it's painful, because it is painful when you're trying and failing, it's terribly painful. But you have to do it as long as it feels right for you.
And in your work as a teacher, how do you work with people in bringing this recognition in daily life?
Well, I work in a few different ways, but I hold also open meetings, but also longer intensives. And my favorite is the 10-day intensive, where we spend 10 days really going very deep into this exploration. And in one way, there's a pointing again and again to the truth of who you really are, and also including all the personal stuff of these humans that have all kinds of old mechanisms, old fears, longings, dreams that still play out. And it's holding both of these together. The recognition of, I am that is aware of everything, and then at the same time I'm this human. And holding both of these together, the paradox of that seems to bring so much freedom for people. And I also have very intimate dialogues in the intensives and in the meetings. That means that I meet each individual where they're at. So I'm not one of these teachers who speak very generally. I prefer to, although I do often give a talk, an introduction, but I do prefer to speak more specifically to where each individual is at, because I find that's really getting to what's really true, what's really happening for individuals, whereas often people can kind of, let's say, escape at the back of the room if I'm just talking generally. So it's a great opportunity to actually be met in exactly the questions that each person has, and the whatever confusion is still there.
Yeah, it's like an embodying.
Yeah.
This.
Yes, because the recognition of who you are is great. As we've said before, it's the bottom line. It's the most fundamental thing. But many people get stuck in that, and it starts to be actually hijacked by the thinking, and people start to create some kind of new identity of I am awareness, for example, and to be stuck in that is, in a way, it's a mental game that many spiritual seekers start to play, and it's very safe. And the embodiment of it all, the including of this human, in a way, is not so safe, because it means that you have to actually come back down to earth and feel what's really going on. And to face some fears that perhaps you were wanting to avoid, and to really wake up in this body as well as just this recognition. Yeah, and it's an endless waking up, not just once.
Yeah. So, does it has any meaning to say I'm awakened or I'm enlightened?
I would say there's no point, really. I mean, it would only be thought that would say that, because it would only be thought that would say, would want some identity like that, some kind of special me story,
Yeah.
But actually, when you see that there is no me, well, who's going to be awakened or enlightened? Who cares even about that?
And how can people contact you, reach you, meet you? How is it possible?
Well, you can go on my website, which is dietolove.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I hold meetings and intensives all over Europe, and hopefully coming to Italy at some point soon.
Yes, we are waiting for you in Italy. We'll decide all details soon and put.
Great. Yeah, and also I do online private sessions and tailor-made programs. So yeah, even if people can't travel, so they can also explore the truth of who they are with me online. But the intensives are really what I love. You know, as I said, these 10-day intensives. I do 5-day intensives also and 3-day intensives, but the 10-day ones are really, you know, if people are really ready to just dive in. Yeah, that's
And
what
you
I.
usually do it in India or in Europe, these 10 days?
No. Usually I do them in Portugal.
Ah, in Portugal.
Yeah, there's one
Lovely.
coming up in September in Portugal, but also 5 days in Holland and in Wales as well. So yeah, and they change every year, but usually we keep doing them in Portugal.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it was just there were many topics covered in this conversation, and
Sure.
yes, and if people want to really get to know you, they can contact you and meet you, and we'll go in every aspect of this beautiful exploration of being alive.
Yeah, that's what it is, really. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks for your time and for being available. There is a beautiful gecko.
Oh, on the wall behind me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's two actually. If you
Yeah.
can see, there's two. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm in India at the moment, but only until April.
Mm, good life in all its
Yeah.
forms.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you.